This is the Get a Life Podcast. Ex-Cult Conversations.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Life Podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations. We are here today with Carmen, Richard, and Lane. And our special guest is Rob McLean from New Zealand, I believe. We had a couple of requests to bring him on, and I know he's got some holes that we can fill in with part of Braden's story, but he's got his own story as well. And so, Rob, I'm just going to hand the mic over to you. And if you want to just let our listeners and viewers know where you're from and what got you outside the PBCC.
Okay, well, thanks, Cheryl. In 2009, I was living in Lower Hutt Church, and that was a fairly small church that I'd sort of been moved to by after living in Wellington all my life, which is a much bigger church. So we went from 400 plus brethren down to just over 100 brethren. This is a Lower Hutt church, and the dynamics of a small church are very different dynamics of a big church, and the personalities and everything have a big part to play, and people's egos and stuff like that. So in 2009, I would have moved there in the early 2000s. So, and it's just so happened that the dynamics of that church were the only people older than me were basically stroke victims, right? So they weren't actually active members as such. So I sort of expected to be sort of one of the high, front row brothers, whereas in Wellington I just kept my head down all my life. So the dynamics were very different. So I was propelled from the reserves into the front line, just like that. And so 2009, things were really toxic. I didn't get on very well with the guy who ran the place, who was an absolute brutal multi-millionaire, absolutely brutal, cruel guy. And unfortunately, the other guy that was propelled to with him was my own brother, my younger brother, and they two are running the Lower Hutt Church, right? So I got on really well with my younger brother back when we lived in Wellington, but when we moved to Lower Hutt, because he became number two in the hierarchy. He sort of turned against me, like it was just overnight. It's just terrible. And the whole dynamics of the Lower Hutt was just like dog eat dog. It was brutal stuff. It was toxic. There was no love in that place. It was just, and the guy that ran it was a brutal little guy. He's an absolute bully. So, so what triggered all this was in 2009, Bruce Hales decided to print a whole lot of JT Jr.'s green books of 1970. Okay, now his green books of 1970 were full of crap, right? And I already had read one or two of his 1970 books, and I knew sort of basically what was in them, so I started reading these, and like I just couldn't get over it, and also I knew I'd always ask questions about JT Jr. because I'd asked my father about it, and it turned out that he was given an ultimatum to he had to either shut up or he'd be kicked out. And then I found out later that my father-in-law was given the same ultimatum, because they both had inside knowledge directly from New York. So I already knew there was absolute dodgy stuff. So I just couldn't help but reading these books, and I just couldn't get over it. So I just started mentioning stuff to my wife, and lo and behold, it got back to the flipping my brother or his wife, and the whole thing. I started getting visits from the priest and stuff like that, and I started getting really disillusioned, and what happened was one time, I think what triggered the whole thing after that was that we got invited to some meetings in the North Island, and Bruce Hales had sent a couple of brothers over to take those meetings, and then Bruce Hales was coming to the North Island to take meetings after that, and so I must have mentioned something to my family about Bruce, he's sending his hatchet men to soften up the place before he comes, and that remark got and at that time Bruce Hales must have been in the country, and that remark got passed directly on to Bruce Hales. Directly, Bruce Hales heard about it, and I was in the absolute crap, right? And I heard a message back saying, because we had been invited to meetings in Whangarei with Bruce Hales after that fellowship meeting, and I heard Bruce Hales said, "Oh, I don't want him at my fellowship meeting," but we'd already been organised to go there, like with everything and people to stay with and flights and bus trips and everything else. So we went, but I didn't know that at the time that I was under surveillance. And when we got to Whangarei, they said, "Oh, you've been changed. Your host has been changed," and it turned out that they thought that I was such a dangerous person, I'd be influencing this young host where we'd been billeted to stay. I'd be influencing him against Bruce Hales or something. So they put us at this other safe house. But, I didn't know that at the time. I was quite suspicious actually. But then we got back to Wellington. And by the way, Bruce Hales was going on about don't be an opposer. So I knew he was getting at me, like basically, you know. So when we got back, we got some more Priesleys, and then at the end of that week, like on the Friday, I came home from work. I said to my missus, "Oh, I can't take any more of this pressure, you know, getting rung up at work and saying, oh, we want to come around and see you and blah blah. I can't run this business like that. And I've had enough and stuff." And she actually took off for the two youngest kids, and she took off down to my brother's place, and she must have been in communication with my brother or the priest all that time, eh? And so she must have been told to get out of it. And the next morning I got a ring saying, I think the next morning was a key meeting, and they were having them at 8 a.m. in those days. And I got a ring from my brother to say, "Oh, we don't want you to come out this morning. We're going to be discussing your matters," which sort of wasn't an absolute surprise to me. So, so at that stage, so my wife was at my brother's house, and her two youngest kids were there, and my two other boys living at home, they went out to the church meeting. So I sort of, and at that stage, I was the guy that was running Lower Hutt Church. I was not seeing at all. Like I told him, "Piss off! I want to see you anymore." So I was being seen by another priest instead of him. So we were not on talking terms even at that stage, just because he was such a bully. And so I just what I did. So I went down and bought a newspaper, and then locked all the doors and stuff, and sat in the bedroom where they couldn't see me, because I knew I'd get a visit after the meeting. And so I get a knock on the door, so I don't go to the door, and then I get a ring back saying, "Oh, blah, we want to see you." I said, "Oh, just leave a note in the letterbox, thanks." So I went down and got this note, and I couldn't believe it. It said they'd actually withdrawn from me on the spot, like
wow,
and like actually, I just couldn't believe it. And then shortly after that, I get a ring from a guy in Wellington inviting us out for the break. And I said, "Oh, no." And I had to tell him. And I just still couldn't believe it, eh? And I was just like going around like a stunned mullet. And I just could not believe that they had withdrawn from me. Like just for that. They didn't even give me a second chance. And it turned out later, I heard from my family that the top brother had said to the brethren in Lower Hutt that Rob McLean believed the lie about Mr. Jim. That's what he told the brethren. In other words, I'd been going on and saying Mr. Jim was an adulterer, which was not what I was not saying that at all. I was just questioning his ministry, and that's why they withdrew from me, because I didn't have any choice. Now that's how much that guy hated me. He wanted to actually destroy me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
I mean, that's an incredible story. And I mean, it's very relevant because I don't know if you noticed in that business with Lance Christie, that court case with Lance Christie, one of the things the brethren objected to was Lance saying that the brethren ran a kangaroo court, which is another way of saying, there's not the proper process of justice. And of course, absolutely fundamental to any kind of justice or due process is that a person has the right to a defense or to defend themselves. So for them to withdraw from you when they had told you not to be at the meeting, so you had no opportunity to answer to the charges, I mean, that's just fundamentally wrong and corrupt.
And I heard the whole meeting was just absolutely shocked. And then I heard that one of my sons is so upset. He went and sat in the car. He's just so upset about the thing.
That breaks my heart.
But I didn't know at the time. It was only later I found this out.
So they didn't shut you up at all? Like there was no shut up. It was just straight...
no warning. There was no warning system, right? And that's what stunned everyone. That's what shocked everyone.
Do you think it was also because you'd said something about Bruce Hales too? Like, do you think that had trickled in as well?
Yeah, that's why they would have. I think that's probably why they were going to shut. He probably told them to, I don't know, bring it to the assembly or something. I don't know what he told them, but I was, and I don't know what the priest actually told Bruce Hales about me, but they might have told him that I believed a lie about Mr. Jim. I don't know, because the guy in charge, he wanted to get rid of me and destroy me.
Yeah, and they've done this so many times, right? Because as
political assassination.
Exactly, it's because, and the only way that the reason that they can do it is because they have these kangaroo courts, like Lance Christie said. They have these things but the audacity of it, to think that these men can go and judge someone's life and then cut them off from their family, friends, life, and everything, just like that, overnight.
Yeah, so two elders in each locality report to Bruce Hales, and they can play God with your life.
Yeah.
They can ruin your life, and no one's going to, and they're not accountable.
Yeah.
And that's
100%.
so wrong, eh?
And this just lights another fire. I see now why I was told to bring you on. This lights a fire in me. This is why we do what we do, because this has to stop. From some of the insiders that I've talked to, especially the male ones, is specifically this reason why they have to be so careful with how they're communicating with me, what they're telling me, all that kind of stuff, is they fear exactly what happened to you.
Yeah.
Like this is just not right. It's just not right that they get to have this kind of power.
Yeah, and they just want to control you and teach you a lesson. And I just knew from that day on, they just wanted to break me. Okay. And they thought I was easy meat. Now, so what happened after that? Like because I never wanted to leave, right? I never had any intention of leaving. I just had questions.
It was forced.
I was never going to walk away from my family. But I'd opened a whole can of worms after that. And so basically, like I still had my own business. Like I had a business that I'd started up with my father for 20 years. So I had 3 of my children working for me and a brethren office lady. And I was still running that business, even though I was excommunicated, because they said, because I didn't say didn't want to go back. They knew I wanted to go back, so they didn't kick me out of the business at that stage. So what happened after that is, I just got, so I was at work Monday to Friday, but then the rest of the time, especially the weekend, like I went from having a full life, everything mapped out for me, a full program, to having nothing, right? It's like at the weekends and stuff. So I was absolutely at a loose end. And so the only person I could talk to outside the brethren, I didn't have any friends, was my GP. And fortunately, she was really good and supportive. And so basically, I started having I just couldn't cope, and I started having panic attacks and acute anxiety and stuff. And I thought all that time, well, how long am I going to be out for? because I knew if people had been out for 3 years and stuff. I said, no, I'm going to be out for a long time. I could be out for a long time. So I didn't want to get my hopes up. But anyhow, so because of my anxiety and stuff, I started. I couldn't eat. I lost my appetite. And it came to the stage where I went to the GP and I lost so much weight. And she said, I'll put you on this pill, on this thing. It should help your appetite. And she gave it to me, prescribed it to me one afternoon, and I took it straight away. I went back to work, and I basically collapsed over. I was doing some photocopying. I collapsed over a photocopier in the office lady's office, and they were just shocked. They really shocked everyone, and they didn't take me home. They just got a taxi for me. But the flipping taxi driver must have wondered, well, they must have thought I was flipping drunk. I was wandering around like a drunkie, and so I collapsed on the bed at home, and I didn't wake up till the next morning. But when I woke up, I thought, I feel like eating some food. So it's like a wonder drug, man. So
Really?
I started enjoying food again, and at the same time, the priests must have got to hear about it, and they must have got the shits up, eh? And after that, they started bringing me meals at night. Every night they'd bring me a cooked meal. The priest would.
Whoa.
Crazy, eh? But
Wow.
and then they said, there's something about, we're hoping you'll be able to come back soon and blah blah. I started to give me little hints, and I was just waiting on the Lord. We're just waiting on the Lord, blah blah. And basically, they must have sent a letter to Bruce Hales to see what to do about me and stuff. But by this time, I'd started making friends with people out there because I had to survive. And my doctor had advised me, encouraged me to reach out to people and stuff. You can't live in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd actually started having a little life out there. But at the same time, I knew that I was absolutely diametrically opposed to breaking up families. Like, that'd be my main hang up all my life, is I knew breaking up families was absolutely wrong, but I never thought it was going to happen to me. So in the end, so they said, so I got rung up one morning and they said, Rob, we want you to come out. We want to come and meet you. No, we want to tell the brethren at the last gospel that we want to bring you back. Can you stay around till then? Well, then if that's after that, we'll come and see you. And this was after 10 months, right? And so this is what happened. So they came around after church or last gospel and came and picked me up and dropped me at home. It was meant to be a big symbolic thing, right? He's Rob. He's absolute. We've cracked him. He's a mental case, and he's never going to cause any more trouble again. But I was really sad because my wife met me at the door, and it was all fine and dandy. And then she must have said to someone, said to my brother or something, he looks like a stranger to me, And it was true. Like, I'd been living 10 months, I'd been living a separate life to my wife and my family. I'd been on a different track to them. And in that 10 months, I had learned so much. My knowledge exploded so much because I was able to go to the internet at night. I went to the library and just to keep me sane, I went to the library and the airport. They had internet access, and I just learned so much about things that I came back I had a knowledge explosion, and I came back and I was just basically I was just absolutely a real disillusioned guy. I said to the doctor, I said, what do I do? Do I go back or not? And when we both agreed that better give it a go, otherwise I might regret it. So that's why I said I'll give it a go. I'll go back and see what happens. But they'd basically got inside my wife's head, the priest said, and basically they said, if you have any concerns about Rob or anything that he says or stuff, you come to us straight away. And that's what happened. Like, everything I said, stuff got back to the priest, and it was chaos from then onwards. So I lasted for a year. And then and after that I said, one Friday afternoon I came home from work and said, maybe I'll go and stay at a hotel for the weekend and we'll see how we can sort this out, see if we can, because everyone's unhappy. And I was under a hell of a lot of pressure by the priest and stuff, because I was meant to be a happy chappy, right? And I wasn't a happy chappy. I was staying on, like, we'd go to Wellington on interchange. I'd purposely sit in the last row of brothers because I was just pissed off, because I knew it was just so wrong. The whole thing was so wrong. And I couldn't even pretend to be happy. I didn't even want to look happy. Anyhow, so my wife agreed, and I'd go away for the weekend and try and see what the best thing was to do. But straight away, the next morning, I rang up the priest and said, I think I can sort this out. I think I know how to sort this out. And they said, oh no, sorry, we want to come around to see you. So they came around to this friggin' motel, and the head priest said, oh, Rob, you're shut up. You shut up, and I'll take you down. We'll find you some somewhere to live. I've got a mate of mine down the street that should have a bedroom for you or something, and that was that. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to my wife and family. So from that point on, I was shut up. Okay, and even though I still didn't want to leave, so I still tried to go back. Right, I was still trying to go back. So they got me this. So and then they got me some premises, place to live by myself. This house, little house by myself, and I lived there for 6 months. I got visited once a week, and they'd come and visit me and say, "Oh, what have you been up to?" and blah 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 blah. And I'd try and do my best. And I said, you can't talk to any of your friends, worldly friends that you had, that you had when I was withdrawn from. So I didn't talk to anyone like that. Didn't talk to them. I was basically living in a vacuum again. And so one time they asked me what I was doing, what I'd done, and I said, "Oh, I've been to the library." Oh, you can't go to the library. Yeah, that's not a place for brethren to go to. You can't. So they stopped me going to the library.
So they were just looking for something.
Psychological abuse. And then a few days later, I saw this guy's wife at the library. So they were just trying to play the game and brainwash me. Yeah. So basically, when you're shut up or withdrawn from, you're basically going through an intensive brainwashing session. Yeah. That's basically what it is. Psychological brainwashing. So after 6 months, and I thought I'd get back after 6. I got my hopes up that I was going to get back, and I couldn't take much more of it. And then my place came up for. I had actually moved to another place, and I thought, oh, they'll let me come back now rather than having more premises. But it didn't happen, and I thought, oh, I can't take any more of this. So what I did is I still had a key to the garage door at my own house. It's my family home. So I went back there and stayed there for 2 nights in the garage. And I took a mattress and stayed there for 2 nights as a defiant gesture. And then I left my wife a note saying, she left me a note saying, oh, please don't stay any longer. We can't go to the supper from here. We can't have visitors, blah, blah, blah. And then I left a note for my priest saying, I'll never ever want to see you guys again. You're fired, you're sacked. And at that point they knew they'd lost me and I wasn't going back. And that same day I bumped into an old friend. I went to an event in the Botanical Gardens in town. It was a music event. I bumped into an old friend, and I got a message from another friend that I made, another friend I'd known while I'd been out, and boom, I was back on track again. So I wasn't going into a huge vacuum. But what happened was after that at work, my family started pulling back from me, and they wouldn't let me in on any decisions or anything. They just froze me out of the business. They were obviously told to. And that was the idea. They were going to freeze me out of the business and squeeze me out. And I was in no fit state to fight them. Okay, I was trying to run that business on my own, and it's not good. So I wasn't a good state. And so basically, end of the day, they got the business valued by their accounts, and I got it valued by mine. So it was going to be basically, I was going to sell. I decided I was going to sell my shares. I had 50% shares, so I was going to sell that to my family. But what happened during that time is, one day I saw these people coming around taking photos inside the premises where we had premises, and I said, "What's going on?" I rang the landlord and said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, don't you know, the family's moving out to premises, this other guy," and it was my main priest, had huge premises. He had done a deal with my son, my oldest son, that when I left, when Rob McLean left, when he sold the business, you were going to move out into his premises, right? So they were going to be under his roof, so he could observe them, and so I couldn't cause any trouble. Now, he'd done a legal deal with my son, signing him up for premises and under my nose. So then when they got back to the lawyers, that they basically panicked, and they basically sold my shares at the price I'd had them valued at, and basically I got out as quick as I could after that. But that was good, and it was bad, okay, because I couldn't take any more. Because fancy fighting against your own sons, in the business.
I can't imagine.
I got on so well with my family, and then you're basically forced to fight your own family. Terrible. But after that, like, I never thought of this, but like, you know how your job is like your reason you get out of bed in the morning. So I'd had this business I'd built it up from nothing, and to leave that business, and I had nothing to get up for, and I didn't feel like working. I just felt crap. Like, I just felt absolutely crushed down to the gutter after leaving my business, and I just couldn't work.
Wow.
And it was life that was just my next big challenge. So I lost my wife. I'd married for 30 years. I lost my wife, 6 children, my grandchildren. Now I lost my business. What else could I lose? Nothing.
It's amazing that you do it as well as you are. That's a blessing. That's incredibly tough what you went through. I can't believe they just put people through this over and over and over again. So what have you done since then?
Well, I didn't do anything for a long time. I just didn't do anything. I just I used to go, to be honest, I found a nice restaurant on the waterfront, and I'd just go there, and Italian restaurant, and I'd just go there during the day while away time and drink Peronis and look out on the water. Like, I just didn't know what to do with my life. I was just stunned. I was just traumatized. And all this time, I was getting help from some drug and addiction services. Like, I did get help, because that's one of the things coming out of the Brethren. Like, when I came out of the Brethren, I was addicted to alcohol, right? Because that was the crutch. And that didn't help, right?
No,
that didn't help. And so I'd go through phases. I'd go dry, then I'd go back, and then I'd go through phases of like cycles and stuff like that. But I wasn't a hardcore alcoholic. It's just that I binge drinked, and I didn't know. Once I started, I couldn't stop, and I'd always go back to my family and stuff. It was an emotional cycle. And then I've had various part-time jobs, but I mean, like, when you're working for yourself, and then you go and work for someone else, you really, unless you got good management, you can have a really bad time. So, and because I was coping with PTSD, like, I didn't have a high tolerance for bad management and stuff. So I've had 2 part-time jobs since then, And then more recently, I've picked up 2 days part-time work with a really good boss, totally different culture, and it's really good. Like I work from Lower Hutt, and I'm basically my own boss, and this company's based in Christchurch, and I do work from up in Wellington.
Okay.
And so that's working out really good. So that gives me structure in my day, 2 days a week, and the other 2 days I do volunteer work with a local church, local Baptist church, because I play guitar. So I provide their backup music and stuff, help out with that. The preschoolers meet up group. So that's quite good as well. Yeah. And I'm actually
Awesome.
officially retired now, so yeah, I've got plenty of time on my hands still.
Well, we can find
That's
you some
good.
things to do if you're good at video
yeah.
editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
So I'm going to tell you one more thing.
Yeah.
Is I finally 3 years ago, I went to Auckland. The reason being that I got a protection order put on me. The local hut, the priests out in Lower Hutt persuaded my family to take out a protection order on me. So they did it through my oldest son, and everyone's included in that protection order. All my family, all my children, my wife, my children, and my grandchildren included in that protection order. How about that? And that's disgusting,
Wow.
eh?
That's shocking.
just
The grandchildren,
right.
that is so evil. So evil.
How much lower can they sue?
A protection.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So I can't have any contact with them, and because I was starting to have a bit of contact with them, and they obviously didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then I went to, and after that, I decided to go to. I was going to live in Auckland because I just wanted to get away from the place, from Lower Hutt, because I didn't want to run into my family. So I went to Auckland, and at the same time, I decided I wanted to get off. Like I had some drink drives, and because I used to drive myself around everywhere, and I didn't want to have any more of those. And so I decided this was a time in my life where I wanted to get sober once and for all. So I went to Auckland. When I went to Auckland, I was going to live in Auckland. I went, booked myself into their drug and addictions services up there, and they're pretty well run. And got an appointment straight away with this clinical psychologist. And I knew there was 2 pills you could take for getting off alcohol, right? Now I'm saying this for anyone that is interested in getting off alcohol. One's called anti-abuse, and that actually makes you physically ill if you touch alcohol. The other one's called Naltrexone, which is not so well known, and I didn't know, and no one ever recommended it to me. And they'd said to me that, it's not as effective, it's not as, can't guarantee it's going to work, and blah blah blah. But I said, so I felt like a guinea pig. I said, I'm going to go on this Naltrexone and try it out and see if it works or not, because it was the least aggressive of the 2 pills. Now I'll tell you what. So basically, you're supposed to take this pill once a day, and so I took this pill. I took this pill for 5 days, but the first day I took this pill, I stopped craving for alcohol. I didn't want to have a drink.
Wow.
And it basically takes away your pleasure thing in your brain that says, alcohol's nice. And I'll tell you what, I've never ever touched a milli microgram of alcohol since.
Good for you.
It was obviously the
That's
right time of my
awesome.
life. It was the right time of my life. Hey, I've been on hard spirits all my life, bro. I need to stop this now. And basically I'll never look back, Like before that, I'd been to AA and everything else and blah, blah. And then I'd go sober and then I'd go back to it and blah, blah. This time. So, and I've never had to take any of these pills ever since. I've still got them if I need to, but I've never looked back. So I can go to a pub with other people or a restaurant and everything else. And I don't mind telling people, I don't drink now. I've drinking all my life. I don't drink anymore. And it doesn't bother me.
That's That's
and
awesome.
and
so good.
I've got traction on my life since then.
That's amazing. I'd never even heard of these
I
drugs.
haven't
Didn't
either.
even
That
know
is
they were a thing.
really, that's
I'd
really
heard
good
of
to know.
anti-smoking drugs that helped you kick cigarettes because they helped
Yeah.
kick that craving, but I never knew that they could do that with alcohol. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Exactly what,
That's
they don't. Why don't they tell people it should be readily available? Because
Yeah.
it would help a lot. It would help a lot of people, man.
I'm glad that we're
Absolutely.
talking about this today because I
Yeah.
mean, we know, I mean, I suffered from alcoholism for years.
Mm.
It's hard. It was a hard one to conquer. It really is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like for myself, it's the same thing that I with that it sounds like for you, Rob, is like mine was an emotional crutch, right? It was I
Yeah,
went
me
on
too,
those
yeah.
binges when I was just grieving what you're cut off
Yeah.
from. And I
Yeah.
mean, my heart is just breaking for you. I'm gonna try and not cry. I just think it's just horrific when we get these dads on here like you who have had to leave behind all their children inside, cut off just like that from their, like, I just hope our listeners and our viewers understand like the horrificness of just boom, one day you wake up and your life is taken away from you. It's just not right. And it is why, I mean, I've just had emails again recently of like reasons why, you know, we shouldn't really do what we do. I mean, they're very few and far between, but I always like to reiterate when I have a moment like this is why we do what we do, because this has to stop, right? This is not right. This isn't right what Richard has to sit in. It's not right what you have to sit in. It's not. This isn't right.
What if you think about it like this? Like, think of all the movies that are made about a guy who gets his daughter kidnapped or son, you know, murdered or something, and he goes on a rampage and gets vengeance, right, for something done to their family. And how many dads would do anything for their families, right, to protect them, to save them? But what do you do when someone brainwashes your child to not even want to speak to you? That is, what can you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
I think we've got to raise public awareness too.
100%.
Yeah.
And then it is through the voices of everybody who has been a part of this coming forward. I'm just so grateful you came on, Rob, today. Like, this is such an important story to get out there. It's so important for everybody who's been in this situation. It doesn't have to be all this sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be that. Everybody's story is so important to be told in just the separation factor, right? Like a family should not be split apart by somebody else's decision in a split second. It shouldn't happen. Nobody should have that power. Nobody should have that power anywhere on this globe.
And if you're in the church right now, realize that this could happen to you. You could get on the wrong side of Bruce Hales and be kicked out and cut off from your family, just like that, overnight, like Rob was.
Yeah.
Well, when I was initially withdrawn from, I wrote to my wife and kids, but I wrote to my wife and said, do you realize that the brethren are it's just part of life, that breaking up families and separating husbands and wives, it's just part of life. It's just the brethren thinks it's a normal thing. It's an absolute normal thing. I said it's absolutely not. The brethren have been brainwashed into this and desensitized, and it's just not a right thing.
And it's not normal in the world. I want brethren members that are listening to understand that when we tell our friends in the real world about our families and how our families refuse to speak to us, they're horrified. People don't do that out here. Unless maybe your child's a murderer or a drug addict that is homeless and can't find you. But people don't do that. That is not normal.
No. They're right out of sync with society.
Yeah.
And I mean, this Royal Commission, they've got all the affidavits. They can see that, and whether the government will do anything about it's another question. But they're going to send a report to the report's got to go in by June to the Governor General, to the government by June of this year
Hmm.
on all the religious abuse in the state and faith-based institutions, including exclusive brethren. But
this will be an amazing report, and I hope that we can get it published
I
and
hope
publicly
I hope it's
in Canada as
publicly
well.
accessible, yeah.
I just wonder, of all the cults that there is there another cult that attacks a marriage like the Brethren do?
Very good
That
point.
what?
That attacks like marriage. You know, marriage is supposed to be precious, but it shocks me to believe how much they separate. Like it just seems to be every day they're
Yeah,
influencing a wife against a husband, and that's just so
I know that Jehovah's Witnesses do it to a certain extent. They shun people.
Yeah.
But like, I think for the amount of breakups there are in exclusive brethren, I can't think of any other.
I agree. I don't think there's, and I have not heard of anybody who can do it with the power that the brethren do. Like just overnight, you're in, and then the next thing you're right out. And I think the part that is the most damaging in there is this belief of always having the man of God on top and the church second, and then family comes underneath, right? Because that's how it works. If you want to look at the hierarchy, we have the man of God, and then it's the church. Then everything else comes second.
Then man, and then women. That's how they look at it.
Exactly, right?
It?
Like it's and that's how they're able to come in, and these wives don't question, the children don't question. Because I did an interview with a journalist yesterday, and he came out and asked me, and he's like, why do you think people stay? Like, why do you think people stay in this kind of abuse and allow this to happen? And I said, because you have to understand, you were raised in this. Your brain is completely developed in this belief and this system of the man of God is first. The church is protected. Everything else comes after. So you are brained to think like that. So in your case, Rob, when somebody shows up and it's like, hey, you can't go to care meeting, and then you're withdrawn from, of course, the wife wouldn't, I mean, obviously she's probably sad. The kids are probably sad, but that you can't express that. You automatically know that this must be what has to happen. You know, it's just, it's just not right. Like something has to break through. There has to be something somewhere in some country where we can get this started, where this is just, it's stopped. It has to stop. My heart is like literally just in that church, broken.
Natural relationships mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what they've done.
There's no compassion. There's no compassion. It's dangerous.
Well, they say that your link with Christ is above all, like your family. And when they say that, that's also code for your link to Bruce Hales and your love to him, right? Your love to the man of God, the leader of the
everything's on code. Everything's in brethren speak. You know, I was thinking the other day about the Japanese kamikaze in World War II.
Yeah.
They were flipping fanatical. They would do anything for the emperor, right?
Yeah.
Anything. Now look at the exclusive brethren. They are dangerous.
Very dangerous.
They've been brainwashed from birth. They will do anything at the moment.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
They're a hair away from fundamentalist and committing violence, right? They're a hair away from committing violence.
I think so.
Here's the thing, what gets really tricky in all this is when there's a vengeance that happens inside there. So exactly what you explained with, you know, that priest that was he wanted you out. That's what happened with our family in Maple Creek, where, I mean, there was this long-standing vendetta with Morse Hope, with his dad had against my grandpa. Then they pass away. It gets just passed on down. And when there is someone who has that type of power that has a vendetta against a certain family, they stop at nothing, absolutely nothing. People ask me, like, therapy wise, all my therapy. And I'm like, you know what? 90% of my therapy I had to get through what happened to me and to our family first before I could tackle what I'm tackling now, because it is there. I can't even explain. So when you talk, Rob, I feel it. How horrific it is when you have somebody with power that is out to get you. It literally feels like you are in prison within your own home. You're in prison within your own town. You're in prison with absolutely everything, and especially when you're in a small community, there's no way out. I mean, it's hard when you're up against that, because the brethren, oh, well, no, that's not happening, when you know exactly that's what's happening, right? It's a vendetta that's being played out. Hey, we're back. Had some connection issues there. I'm not sure where we were.
Yeah. Rob, you were saying, what were we talking about?
We were talking. We got into the charity commissions, or the commissions report that was going on. Anyhow, let's just kind of divert over to something that we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about, you witnessed something happened that was it at Braden's house, or was it how did that go down?
So when I was living in Auckland, I stayed at Braden's for a bit, Braden's house. Okay. And he had another boarder there at the time, and she was from France. She was just there temporarily, and she was I think she's waiting to get a flight back home. It was just before COVID, actually, I think. Anyhow, so one morning, 7 o'clock one morning, I had this knocking on the door, and I think my bedroom was closest to that, with the front of the house so I looked out the window, and I was like, I'd been asleep, and there was all these important people standing on the front lawn, and suits and stuff, like black men in ties. And they said, are you Braden? I said, no. And they said, are you Rob? And I said, and I didn't say anything. And so by that time, Braden had woken up, and so he went and opened the door, and the guy that presenting the papers said, want to come in and give you these papers and stuff. Is big. And like, Braden obviously didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to let anyone in. But I think he rang his lawyer and asked him what he should do. And so his lawyer said, this what it was. He'd managed this lawyer or barrister, whatever he is, had managed to get a high court order signed to basically search Braden's premises, which is pretty weird. So there's no police or anything involved, it's just lawyers, and including the
Very
Brethren.
fishy.
This is how the Brethren operated, eh?
Yeah, they've done it several times. Yeah.
So they had a private investigator and was searching through everything, and we were there for quite a while. And they had to turf the French girl out of her room as well. Well, that's quite horrible too, eh? Like, had to wake up her and ask her to get out of her room and stuff. And we were waiting around in the lounge and stuff. I was really angry about the whole thing. So I videoed it. I just went around and videoed what they're doing. And then
It's a huge misuse of law, right? Like they're absolutely abusing the law. Like that shouldn't be allowed, because they obviously couldn't get police to do it, right? So they had to try and use lawyers to try and get the search thing. And the funny thing is what were they exactly searching for?
They're trying to get dirt on Braden.
Yeah, but wasn't it something silly, Richard, like contact list or something?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the detail was, but yeah, I mean the irony is that, you just had Lance being dragged over the coals, dragged into high court by the Brethren for harassment. Well, I mean, what's harassment if it's not getting a whole bunch of lawyers in suits and ties to search through your house? I mean, wow, that's harassment.
And we know that there's nothing cool about the Brethren. There's their ministry books. Nobody wants them, right? Like so we know that it's harassment because there isn't possibly anything cool that you could keep from the Brethren that anyone in the world would want.
They're not hot. They're certainly not cool, and they're certainly not hot. So,
They make a good wiener roast, although the pages are so light that they get stuck in your hot dog. It sucks.
So they went through all of Braden's computers and hard drives and everything else, and downloaded them onto a remote server because they had a computer expert there as well. And then friggin' well, and they said, oh, they have to search my computer as well. I said, oh no, I'm going to ring the police about this. So I was just being really difficult. Braden said, oh no, don't cause any trouble, and there's no point. So I watched them, videoed them going through my computer as well. They weren't very serious about that. But and then at one stage we found out that Braden decided to lighten the whole thing up, and he played his electronic keyboard electronic, so he started playing his keyboard, and we played all these old tunes, and I got my guitar out, and we're playing away, and we got the computer expert, it turned out that he was a computer buff, a guitar player as well, so he got playing. So he videoed all that as well, was just to lighten things up. Make it look
That's
stupid.
Hilarious.
But, it's crazy, yeah. Finally, they left after about 3 hours. But it was quite. So and during that time, Braden rang his father and said, "Oh, what was happening?" And he'd be late to work. So his father came right round because his father was in the church at that time, right? He wasn't shut up or anything. So he came round, and I ended up having a jolly good talk to him, which wouldn't normally happen because I was persona non grata.
Yeah.
Don't blame you, yeah.
Absolute opposer, arch opposer. But anyhow, that's what happened there, and so I supplied all that to Braden for his evidence, video evidence.
Wow. So did the court document actually give them the right to look through your computer, or not, or were they just kind of stretching it?
They just said search all the electronic equipment on your premises. I'm sure I could have dug in and said no, it's outside the thing, but
yeah.
The thing is, like they had the Brethren's lawyers had to go through some absolute archaic piece of British law to find a loophole and stuff that they could use, so they could search Braden's premises. Like it's pretty weird, eh?
Yeah,
like it's some Russian spy or something.
Yeah, it's called an Anton Pillar raid after the original case it's based on. Yeah. Apparently, it's very difficult to get in Canada. Canada's got better protection. So, I mean, I kind of think that's probably what the Brethren were wanting to do to me all this time. They were chasing me around, but I think they were told that, look, you'll never get a grant to do this, and that's when they kind of changed their plan and said, well, we can't do this legally. Let's just sort of go in and, lock the guy out of his house and steal his equipment or whatever they were planning. But it's crazy that would be allowed in a sort of modern democracy. You'd never think it was possible. But, they got enough money and they got big enough lawyers and they can actually do this kind of crap.
Yeah. But it's interesting that in New Zealand at the moment, the Brethren are really soft-footing it because they know they're being investigated.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything intrusive or litigating or anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, them losing this case, going against Lance and losing that is going to make them even more soft-footed.
Hopefully,
because that's a black eye.
But they'll never tell any of their people inside that they lost. They'll just
that's right. We'll tell them.
We will. That's exactly.
You only hear one side of the story in there, and it's a very distorted side of the story.
Yeah.
But I heard in New Zealand that not even shutting people up at the moment. That's
too scared.
In the eyes of the commission, that's freaking abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's psychological abuse.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need laws. We need protection laws against it, and we need to expose it more. And we hopefully will get some justice.
I think abuse of all types needs to be become illegal.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, New Zealand is the only commission of inquiry into abuse that's included all types of abuse. In the UK and Australia, they only looked at sexual abuse, but in New Zealand, it's all types of abuse. So that's why the Brethren got involved, pretty much.
Yeah.
It is hard though, like just talking from insiders who aren't going to meeting and aren't shut up. When we talk about other types of abuse, they get every other type of abuse along with it. And that's the hard part, is because they're trying to hide behind this. Well, we're not shunning this person. This person doesn't shut up, but everything else is still happening. And that's what really needs to be. The Brethren just have such a sneaky, sly way of trying to get behind what they're supposed to be doing, right? To correct these things, but still keep all the abuse happening in behind.
I mean, it's what's called constructive dismissal. I mean, if you've got an employee that you don't want to actually fire because you'd have to pay him some compensation, then what people will do is they'll make the employee's life so unpleasant that the employee resigns, and then they don't have to pay him off. And the Brethren have got that to a fine art. So, I mean, it was kind of the same when I left, that because the Charity Commission thing had all happened in England, they were very reluctant to actually sort of formally have a meeting and withdraw from someone. So they just make your life hell and tell you walk out yourself. And then they can say, oh, well, we didn't want him to stop coming to church. He left of his own volition. But they sure make your life hell and tell you do go.
So since you've been out, Rob, have they ever tried making amends with you? Have they ever tried I can't remember when the review happened. Like, was the review around that time or was it later? I think it was later, wasn't it?
It was before. The review was in the early 2000s.
Oh, that's Bruce right. Hales that's right. Yeah.
Then came to power. And talking about that review, they said, we acknowledge past mistakes. We've made mistakes in the past, right? So they put these things right because they made mistakes. What they've never acknowledged, of course, is and this is the elephant in the room, is the biggest mistake they made of all is they're going against scripture and breaking up families.
Yeah,
that's what they should not be doing. Then they would not have to have reviews if they stopped breaking up families. But they're still, we've acknowledged past mistakes. We're still making this huge mistake, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Keep on breaking up, wrecking families, and making people's lives a misery.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to be known as a mainstream Christian church, but they've removed Christ out of it and replaced it with Bruce, is what they've done.
Well, they're probably a mainstream Brewston church, aren't they?
yeah, that would be a better name for it, because everything focuses on Bruce. Like, they've completely removed Christ out of it.
If you look really into cults, they're a mainstream cult.
Yeah. There's nothing Christian about it. Like, they might as well dump the Bible too, because they don't follow it. They don't read it. They don't apply it.
No.
They don't go.
I think that they have to have separation, though, because if they didn't, right, and if they allowed families to contact and everything, people would just leave. Right? My goodness. Because all these family members, like us, okay, all of us that would go and hang out with our families if they would allow us to, right? We would be such an example of happiness and joy and being happy that they'd be like, this doesn't make sense, right? So they can't allow that because it would just expose what hypocrisy that they live.
Yeah, destroy the illusion, wouldn't it? It'd destroy this lie that, everyone who leaves and, they have this terrible, miserable life. Yeah, I mean, that the separation is not to keep the world out. The separation is to keep the brethren in. That's what the wall's there for.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the only layer of protection that protects Bruce.
Well, look, what you said before, Cheryl, about your parents and a vendetta, family vendetta and stuff. That is what the Brethren are all about, because you're born into this system from birth. No one joins it, no fresh blood. It goes back generations, And what do you get when you've got a closed system like that with finite amounts of bloodlines? What do you get but all this hatred and animosity and stuff like that? People biting and devouring one another. What else can you expect?
Yeah, it's just like Game of Thrones, isn't it? Basically,
there's just no balance. There's nothing to
but
keep it
not so much
balanced.
sex.
Yeah, it is. It is true. It is true. And, I mean,
it's basically getting every generation's getting more and more extreme, inward looking, and more removed from society.
Yeah,
and
They're
I mean,
getting
you
more
hear about that.
interrelated.
And you hear about that through the principals and teachers that have reached out to us from One School Global, right? With what they're witnessing. And I mean, some of the stuff that they're witnessing, I mean, it's just horrible. It's all based, every single person that comes forward, you ask them, okay, well, what is this? Like, what do you feel is the issue here? And it's hierarchy. It literally comes down to the bullying in the school comes down to the hierarchy within the families, right? Those vendettas just get kept on passing down.
You know what? I don't know why I was just thinking of this, but another sad thing about the brethren is the brethren that especially live in smaller localities, they would call them, right? Or smaller cities, because you're not allowed to have friends outside the church. So you'd sometimes only have like 2 people your age in the entire thing, and you were limited and not allowed to make any other friends outside. So, you know, you're just so limited in there into how many people you can even interact with.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is with that. Like I went from a big locality to a real small one, so I can see what you're saying. But in a big locality, like say Sydney or whatever, you can have a massive social life. Like I had a massive social life when I was living in Wellington. I just kept my head down. And just enjoyed life the best I could. When you go to if you're born into a small meeting or you move to a small meeting, that's flipping can be really nasty, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a small meeting, you can't get away from those people who are tormenting you. In a big meeting, you don't have to interact with people you don't like. In a small meeting, it's cabin fever. It's like being locked up in a small hut with 10 people that you hate their guts.
It's not healthy.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Because they see them every single day, 365 days a year. You're never learning about any new culture, right? Like you literally, the biggest culture shock to a brethren person is when they go from North America to Australia, maybe, or something, right? Like they just have no friends outside anything. So they have they're just boring, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So for our listeners and viewers that are listening in right now, in the Plymouth Brethren Crazy Cult, I'm going to use James's term from now on. He calls it the Plymouth Brethren Crazy Cult. So you can have special friendships. It's like, so exactly what's what happened with me. It's literally why I got all the priesthood visits I did, was because of the special friendships. If you end up hanging out with someone, over and over and over, and they see that you're developing a special bond, that's considered a special friendship, and that is not allowed. So you are not allowed to develop a special bond with somebody. I mean, you sit back and you look at that etiquette and rule that they have. It's the perfect way for you not to be able to rely on somebody, right? It is. It's like everybody, they just got to keep their head up, and it's just Bruce Hales in the church up here.
Yeah.
Think how sick that is. You're not allowed to have a real human connection with a friend. You're not allowed to make a friend. That's insane.
Bruce Hales instituted a purge soon after he came to power about special friendships, and everyone had to have priestlies and public confessions about all the special friends they had.
I remember my dad being upset about that, because we had these guys that would come in for business trips, and they got along with my dad, so they'd stay at our house every time, right? And when this came out, it sucked. We all of a sudden started having to have over these families that we really didn't like.
I didn't realize he enforced that. Of course, I was gone by then. So what was it? He just went from locality to locality, and everybody had to get rid of their special friendships?
No, it was more like if it just like if they were noticed before, you just had to kind of stop, right? Like,
I gotcha.
you know.
But the crazy thing is that, like, the leading brothers in every locality, there's always the big cheese, and then there's the big cheese little sidekick who trots along after him. I mean, you know, it's a very obvious special friendship. You know, you lick my butt, I'll lick yours. And yet these are the people who are kind of going after the teenagers because they actually spoke to the same person twice the same evening. I mean, the hypocrisy of it. And look at the top of the brethren. There's this little tiny clique of a little clique of big cheeses, if you like. I mean, the whole core of the brethren management in Sydney is run on special friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't
But
realize
you have
that.
to keep it that way. That's the only way you can control it.
Yeah.
You know, you let anybody else in there and then you don't have control of the information.
It's the same as a leader putting down their opposition party. You know what I mean? He makes sure that no one else is allowed to have special friendships except his special friendships, of course.
Right.
Because he feels threatened. I mean, if you get a few people getting together and agreeing about something, then he's threatened because, you know, these people might agree that Bruce is not actually the best thing since sliced bread. And, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd say anyone that leaves needs to get counselling,
Yes.
because that'll help you see things from a rational perspective. Because when you leave, you're emotionally all mixed up. Because in there, nothing's rational.
No. I mean, the whole system's built on lies. And so when you start to see the truth, you find everything you believe starts to crumble, and it's very, very traumatic in your mind.
Yeah, you have to have kind of something to hold on to, and sometimes, in my personal experience, you know, a therapist was that guiding hand that I needed to go back through some really dark shit, right? And like I would say that too. Like, definitely counseling is
therapy saved my butt too. Yeah, it's so important. I'm gonna ask you a hard question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but we know that the insiders are watching these. What would you say to your children and grandchildren if they watch this? What would you want to say to them? What would you want to say to them?
Say, I love all of them very much, and I hope to see them one day.
Yeah, there has to be change. There just has to be. This isn't right. This isn't how it should be. I've always said that lately, that is, Bruce Hales doesn't have a broken system. He has a system that works the way he needs it. It's up to everybody else for them to realize that it is a broken system, and it only benefits him, right? It's not benefiting anybody else but him. Yeah. But, well, Rob, we are very appreciative of you coming on today. I don't even know what to say. My heart just goes out to you. I know it's hard coming on here and bringing it all back up again, but I know many insiders are watching these, and it's very important, especially for those like yourself and Richard, to be able to tell your story, because it is, I can't even explain to you how many fathers I get that message and that want to leave, but are waiting. They're waiting for something to change, right? They're just waiting. And it's sad. It is real. It's hard. It's hard sometimes talking to them. It's hard sometimes listening to what they're saying and writing, and because I just want to go in. I just want this all to stop, right? But it's not that easy. And it's the courage of people like you and everybody else who comes on here and tells their heart-wrenching stories that people inside there relate to. And that is the biggest thing I think everybody in there looks for, is related. They want to be able to relate to us and to realize that we haven't broken. We're still standing very strong in our decisions. But it does take a lot to transition. It really does, because you're leaving one world and you're entering into freedom, and that's hard. It's hard to do that. Yeah. So
thanks for having me, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Thanks,
thank you
Rob.
so much.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us again. And until next time, much love to you all.
To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me.